Why is it that no matter how much revision, past year papers, and homework that you do, you still flop when it comes to exam? Well, it's really simple. You have just not been trained to work under pressure. Let me give you an analogy. If you play sports, chances are you do very well when it comes to training. But when it comes to the real matches, you just can't produce the same level of performance. Why? It's because you're nervous, right? It's the same thing when it comes to exams. But don't worry, that can be fixed. I scored almost straight A stars for my IGCSEs, and one of the reasons is because I knew how to deal with pressure. In one of my sessions, when I go through exam strategies, I talk about the 4 reasons why every student flop when it comes to exams, and the step-by-step framework to never feel nervous again when it comes to exams. I spent the next 20 minutes going through these things with one of my students, so lean in, take out your paper, and take notes. No, okay. Here's the
Sometimes.
thing. Okay, cool. Here's the thing. 90% of students do all the practice in the world. They do 2 years worth of past year questions, 3 years worth of past year questions, whatsoever. When they're revising, they get good grades, they score really well, they feel confident. But when it comes to exam, they flop big time. Right? How is that even possible? If someone did 3, 4 years worth of past year questions, how is it even possible that this person flops when it comes to the real exam? Very simple. Let me give you a real life example. You play violin and piano, right?
Yeah.
Now, let's go all the way back when you were first learning, right? When no one is looking and when you're just practicing at home, chances are you can do it perfectly, right? But when your mom comes in or when your dad comes in or when just people come and watch you, you start to get nervous and mess things up. Have you ever had a situation like this before?
Yeah.
Yep. Why is that? Because of 4 things. Okay. So I'm just going to write it over here. Why do we mess preparation up? Why do we mess it up? Right? 4 things. Firstly, pressure. Number 2, crowd. Number 3, timing. And what's the fourth one? I'm trying to recall over here. Yep. So number 4, coaches or judge. Right? In this case, could be your parents, could be your examiner, but anything, right? You're just being judged by someone. Now, this 4 reasons is why when you play an instrument and when someone comes in, like you tend to flop things up, right? You tend to mess things up because there's all this external pressure, people are watching you, and now you have to perform. Let me give you another example. Let's say you juggle a ball 50 times in a row. If you play football, a lot of people know how to juggle. But when their friends come in, or when football coaches come in and they ask the kid to juggle, chances are he can probably only do 10 in a row compared to 50. Right? His peak is at 50, but he can only do 10. Why is that? Again, these reasons: pressure, crowd, timing, and the fear of being judged. Okay. And another example could be, let's say, I guess this won't apply to you. Okay, let's say you want to ask a boy out. Okay, let's say you want to ask a boy on a date. You can be the most prettiest person ever, but if you haven't asked a boy out for a date, chances are you're going to fumble, right? Why? It's because you just haven't been in an environment where you ask someone out for a date. So you're going to feel nervous about it. This is human beings, right? We feel nervous and we get scared to new environments. We cannot accept foreign environments. So when you get a new tutor, for example, or when you go to a new party, you tend to get nervous. Why? Because foreign environment. By the way, if you think like you can be very cool and confident and you're going to succeed in your real exams, your real IGCSEs by not putting yourself under exam conditions, which I will get into later on how to put yourself under exam conditions, I'm going to tell you that you're going to flop. Take it from me, you won't be this confident when it comes to exams, right? Humans naturally struggle in new environments, right? So again, that's why going to party feels weird for the first time and things like that. So in order to beat this, you need to expose yourself to new environments. So how do you actually do this? You need exposure, okay? You need to put yourself in a new environment. So here's 3 simple hacks that I follow to put myself in a new environment when it comes to exams and train myself under exam conditions. Number 1, timer. So simple, yet a lot of students don't do it for some reason. When I say timer, I'm talking about full screen timer, right? As though it's like a nuclear bomb countdown, you need to have it full screen. So let's say you have a 2-hour assessment, 2-hour paper that you're doing. Put the timer on your computer and make it full screen, right? You should literally see it counting down from 1 minute 58, 1 hour 58 minutes, 1 hour 50 minutes. You need to see that countdown, right? Again, this will help you with pressure. You need to see. You can't just set a timer on your phone and keep it aside and be like, hey, I'm timing myself. You might as well not do it, right? You need to set a timer and you need to see it going down, counting down. Because let me tell you this, when you go to a real exam, they will have a very big clock, right? They will have a very big clock that you will be able to see, right? So it's going to be very nerve-wracking in the real exam because you're going to see that, the minute hand going all over, the hours hand going all over until you complete your exam. So to get used to that, the closest thing that you can simulate is having a digital clock. If you have an actual kitchen timer, right? If you have a kitchen timer, I have one, but it's outside. And if you could put that in front of you and set a 2-hour timer, and that's even better, right? But most people don't have access to that, and simply because that's pretty old school. So timer on computer full screen is the best way to do this. Okay, that's number one. Okay, number two is speed running past year questions. Speed running PYQs. Okay, so here's what you do: you take a past year question, you set your timer, all right, and you speed run it, and you basically don't check over things that you don't know, right? Let's say there's 12 questions. Okay. Your goal is to not complete the paper by the time the timer runs out. Your goal is to do as many questions as possible. This should be your goal. Now, when you do this, you're going to realize this. Okay, if you have a problem with silly mistakes, right? If you are the type of student that makes a lot of careless and silly mistakes, and everyone has been, berating you for this, your parents, your other teachers, your school, whatever, right? If everyone's complaining that you make silly mistakes, this is how you eliminate making silly mistakes, right? If you just speed run past your questions, you can get rid of your careless mistake and silly mistake problem for life, right? So let me tell you how this works. When you first speed run a passing question, obviously you are going to make tons of silly mistakes, right? But here's the magic thing. When you keep doing more passing questions and when you keep speed running more passing questions, the amount of silly mistakes that you make goes lower, right? Let's say it takes you 40 minutes to complete a 12 question paper, for example, and you make 7 silly mistakes. Next time, let's say this is the first try, right? Let's say on your third try, okay, you set yourself 35 minutes to complete the paper, and you will see yourself making lesser silly mistakes. Your amount of silly mistakes that you will make is probably going to decrease to 6 or 5. Although that seems very small, again, I talked about compounding in our last session, right? Over the long run, it's going to compound. And when it comes to real exams, you will not make any silly mistakes. I had a huge silly mistake problem when it came to my additional mathematics and normal math as well. I was okay in sciences, but just math, plus, minus, multiply, divide. I had problems where I was just making terrible, silly mistakes. So I had to put a stop to this. And the way I put a stop to this was literally speed running past your question, right? Speed running past your questions is a very go-to technique. So again, timer, first have a timer. And second, you need to speed run PYQs. Okay, speed running PYQs can be fun if you're good at the subject. If you're not good at the subject, it's going to feel like the worst hour of your life. But hey, do you want to make silly mistakes? Do you want to keep making silly mistakes? Chances are you're not, right? Silly mistakes is the saddest thing ever because it's not like you didn't know the concept. You were just being silly. You're just being careless. You weren't fully present. So how do you eliminate this? Again, speed run your past year questions. Okay. If it takes you 40 minutes and 7 mistakes, you track it. On your second try, take 35 minutes and make sure you make lesser silly mistakes, right? You will see yourself gradually making lesser and lesser silly mistakes. And by the time you take exams, you're probably going to make maybe 1 or 2 silly mistakes. Or if you're lucky enough, you're not going to make any silly mistakes at all. Okay. Now, tip number 3, skip the um skip the long and big mark question. Okay. So actually no, what am I saying? There's no skip, it's start. Yep. I meant to say skip the lower mark question. So you need to start with the longer ones and the big mark questions first. Okay. Why? Now, when you sit in the exam hall and when you open your paper and when you take out your pens and your calculators or whatever, right? That is when you are the most confident. Okay. Let's say it's a 2-hour exam. Okay. I'm going to draw a graph here. Okay. It's a 2-hour exam, right? So hour 1, hour 0, hour 1, hour 2. Someone in the waiting room. So hour 0, hour 1, hour 2. This is hours. And over here is your confidence level. Okay, this is how it naturally works. Your confidence level is going to decrease as you complete the paper. It's just natural. Okay, at least it was the case for me. Okay, so when your confidence level is at its absolute peak, why don't you make use of it? Right? In your absolute peak, your knowledge is primed, your skills are primed, you know how to answer questions because chances are the day before or a week before you actually did a lot of past questions, right? You want to put it into play. So that is why I'm recommending you guys start with longer and big mark questions. As soon as you get a paper, do not care about the simple 1-2 marker. Again, 1-2 markers, we can come back to it at the end, right? That's not where leverage is, right? If we want to actually score the big marks, we need to capture the big marks, right? If you want to score the big grades, we need to capture these big marks. So what I suggest you guys do is when you're looking at a passing questions, when you're doing a passing question, okay, now come out of the exam hall. Okay, just imagine you guys are at home doing a passive question and you guys are under exam conditions. Okay, let's say you already have a timer. Okay, and let's say you already tried speed running. Okay, now here's the third thing that you're trying right now. You are starting with the long and you're starting with the big mark questions. Okay, usually if the question is long, it's going to be a lot of marks. Like it's a very proportional relationship. Now, um, again, yeah, I suggest you guys start with the big mark questions simply because you already know everything. Okay, skip the small ones, go to the big ones. Okay, because when you start with the big ones, you actually understand it and you can answer and you can give all full marks for that question. You're going to feel very confident, right? So let's say you see a big mark question, okay, and you do it now. You feel good. You feel like, hey, oh my god, I just secured 6 marks in the bag. It's solid. I'm going to go to my next question now. And you're going to feel even better doing the next question because you already built that confidence in successfully answering the big mark question. Okay. So your confidence, yes, it's probably going to decline, but it will decline at a much slower rate. Your confidence will look something like this when you start with the big mark questions. If you start with small mark, it's just going to be like this. It's going to be steeper. It's going to take a huge decline, right? Your confidence level could be really low because by the time you reach the end of your exam, right, most students rush. Okay, and imagine you have 10 minutes left, but you have a 6 marker question to do. Both of you guys are going to panic. Suhail, you will panic, and Emma, you'll panic. No matter how prepared you are going to panic because time is running out, and there's a big chunk of question over there that's left to be answered. So why don't we take care of these things at the start? Have you guys heard the term eat the frog? Right? So there's this saying when you wake up in the morning, eat the frog. Do the most difficult task that you have in the morning so that you can get rid of it and just do all the easy stuff later. Okay. So an example for me is filming. Okay. Naturally, I am not talented in filming. I don't like filming content for this for my business. I don't like doing it. But again, it's the one thing that I can do that will give me the most leverage when it comes to my business. Right. So what do? Every 3 days when I wake up, I sit in front of the tripod and I dance in front of the camera and I get my recording done and I move on to the rest of my day. And once I knew that, hey, I actually accomplished this pretty big thing in the morning, I actually feel very confident throughout the rest of the day to complete my tasks. Same thing when it comes to you guys. When you are handling a past question, when you're handling a practice set or whatever it is, just skip to the big ones. Skip to the big ones. It'll usually be at the end or at 3/4 through the paper. That's why your big marker questions is going to be. Skip through the small ones and just go all the way to the big ones and settle that first. And then you can come back to the small ones. Doesn't matter. So in total, to prime yourself for exam conditions, this is probably the easiest thing. You guys can do this today, right? Set a big ass timer, put it on your computer, and make sure it's full screen. Okay, you need to see the minutes and hours counting down, right? You're going to pretend like, okay, in 2 hours, there's going to be an explosion, everyone's going to die. Okay, you need to feel that kind of pressure when you're looking at the timer go down. Okay, so set a timer. Number 2, speed running past your questions is probably the hardest thing to do over here in my 3 hacks, but it will give you the most results, right? It's the highest leverage thing, right? Usually the things that will give us the highest leverage is often hard to start with. Okay, by the way, what does leverage mean? Leverage means advantage, kind of. Okay, more or less the same thing. So speed running past your questions is my absolute favorite. I did this about a month before my real IGCSEs. I just speed run every single thing for every subject, and I ended up doing quite well for my IGCSEs, as you guys know. So this is what my personal favorite. I would recommend doing this. Okay, and the third hack would be starting with the long and big mark questions, right? Doing the third hack is honestly not that hard. All you guys have to do is sit down and just go to the big questions, right? It's just really simple. Again, these 3 things are very easy to implement, but hey, nothing is going to work unless you guys actually sit down and get to work and implement these techniques. I've done so many sessions like this. I've talked to multiple students, multiples of parents, right? I say all kinds of good things, but if you guys don't implement, forget it. Forget about your good grades. Like genuinely, if you want to see results, you need to take action, right? The outcome you want is good grades, then the price you have to pay is doing things like this. Okay, you can't have a good outcome and an easy life, right? If you want a good outcome, you got to struggle and suffer a little bit, right? And in your scenario, since you guys are students, it would be implementing exam conditions, implementing your study techniques, whatsoever. There's a lot of things you can do. But for the sake of today's session, kind of put yourself in exam conditions more. Okay. Now you might be thinking, my IGCSEs, GCSE exams are next year. Why do I have to put myself in exam conditions? Well, the earlier the better, is my argument to you, right? So once a week, let's say you are doing an ad math practice paper with 4 topics, right? So I have access to topical past papers. If you guys want the link, I can send it to you. I'll send it to your relevant group chats. So at the end of the week, what you guys can do is you can download topical past paper questions, right? And I want you guys to print it and speed run it, right? Implement these techniques, speed run it, put a timer, start with the big questions, right? Use one technique at a time, right? Don't try to do multiple things at once. You will break. Very common rule in life, right? So if you want to start with technique one, start with technique one. In week two, you stack speed running on top of having a timer. And then in week three, you stack starting with big questions on top of speed running, on top of having a timer, right? So start with one technique at a time, and I promise you guys will see success. To recap, one of the reasons students actually flop when it comes to exams is because they have never been trained under exam conditions. When you are practicing at home, doing your past year papers, there's no pressure and time limit. But when it comes to the exams, it will be the complete opposite. Firstly, use a full screen timer. Please, you need to see your life counting down right in front of your eyes. Secondly, speed run through past year papers, right? The goal here is not to be accurate, but it's to be fast and avoid silly mistakes. Lastly, start with the big mark questions. Your confidence is usually the absolute highest at the start, so use it to your advantage. When you practice like this, the exams stop feeling foreign and pressure becomes normal to you. Now, if you love this and you found this really useful, I have another video where I talk about the only 3 pillars that you need for studying. These are the only 3 things that you will ever need in order to succeed for your IGCSEs. Now, I'll leave the link to that video somewhere in this screen or in the description below. And as always, I'm rooting for you and I really hope you win.